Thanks, everybody, for joining us today. If you could just indicate that you'd like to ask a question by raising your hands and wait for the wireless mic to get to you before you ask a question. Also, please just let us know who exactly you're asking the question to. Questions?
Karen Sweetside for BostonBruins.com. I'll start off with Mr. Jacobs. With the home opener now a week away, just how have you seen the transition of this organization gone from where you were last season to where you want to be this year?
Well, it's a significant change, obviously. The leadership with Donnie has made. I mean, that's the obvious one, and there's a number of new players that have been brought in. So, to that end, it's a major change. On the other hand, there's so much stability under there within the coaching staff and the operations that I don't think there's significant change in that sense. But I think you have a lot of confidence in Donnie's leadership. He's been here, how many years now? Like 10? 10 years. And before that, he spent his whole career with us pretty much. So there's a lot of stability.
All right, well, thank you.
Oh, that leadership. That's very stable.
Donnie, just nuts and bolts here. Did you make more cuts today?
Yeah, we did. We made a couple other transactions before practice, and we'll also make a couple. We have not spoken to a couple other players right here after practice as well. So yeah, we've cut down the roster significantly again today.
Do you know when you'll have a decision on the backup goaltender?
Well, we're going to go through the rest of the other game tomorrow, and we're going to sit down as a group. Bob Ascenz has been working hard in terms of analyzing from his side of it, as well as we as our staff. I'm sure Claude will weigh in on where he fits, where we think it fits in. It's been a heck of a competition throughout camp. Our young players had played particularly well. Obviously, Gus was throwing a curveball with his first child being born to he and his wife, and went off for a couple days. Came back and was able to play last night. So we have a big decision to make, but we feel confident in being able to make that moving forward.
A question for Claude. Claude, emerging young defenseman and seemingly what becomes the defensive core into the first few weeks. Can you talk about maybe Z's, maybe a different responsibility he may have, and maybe as an ad-lib coach, if you will, along the bench during the games?
Well, I think there's no doubt that Z's experience comes in handy when it comes to young players, and I think we've all been in our career in that position to have some young players around us and been able to share our knowledge and our experiences throughout the years. That's helped us become better, and that's where Z is extremely good at in that role. He's been like that for many, many years, so obviously maybe might be a situation where he's even more of that role or of that example this year, but at the same time, I think we've got some exciting guys back there that is going to help make our team better and grow in the right direction. So I see a lot of positives in that area. But, Z is asked to do his job and do it well. We don't want him to do more than he has to. But like I said, sharing your experience is something that we've all done, and that's something that comes easy to him.
Mick, Standard Times, for Cam. Claude's got to take the players he's got and try to win games. Donnie's got to pick the right players. From your angle, how does the importance of a solid start to the season factor into degrees of implementation of younger players or more high-risk reward playing style? Organizations going through changes. What's your outlook on the kind of start you need versus what you'd like to do philosophically?
Well, that's a good question because it's we've tracked in the past that by Thanksgiving, if you're in the playoff picture, generally by the end of the year you're still going to be in the playoff picture. But you mentioned it's a little bit of a transition. We have some younger players that I think will develop over the course of the year and get better over the course of the year. I think the coaching staff's going to do a really good job in helping these players develop, and I think we'll see the team improve over the course of the season. But having said that, we still have enough players that have been around the game long enough and are good NHL players, really good NHL players, that I think can help bring those guys along at a quicker pace. And I feel like we can have a strong start because of that.
Emily Benjamin, Boston Globe. This is for Don. What have you seen or not seen from Alexander Kokochev throughout this camp, and what did you think about his comments about whether or not he's gotten a real chance?
Well, all players are entitled to their opinion. I feel that Alexander has a tremendous upside, skill-wise. He still has a lot to learn away from the puck. He needs to go through these experiences. And he's only 22 years old. I look at the big picture for all of our young players. They'll determine, when they're ready to play and when they can help us at the National Hockey League level. I do believe he's a player that can step in, and whether or not he can play up and down the lineup sort of remains to be seen. But we want him to continue to work hard to fill in those gaps, be it face-offs. I mean, there's small details of the game that show up on the score sheet each night. And, if you look at the analytics side of things, like those things, can add up. And the amount of time you play in your own end as a result of losing draws at times, it's taxing on other players that they have to. There's just little areas of the game that everybody as a young player needs to go through and experience and come out the other side of it better. And, he wants to advocate for himself, so I don't blame him for that standpoint. So I didn't feel we needed to comment publicly on it.
Tim Rosenthal, Bruins Daily. This is for Don and Cam. This year, 3-on-3 overtime is a new thing. We've got a taste of it so far, a few games this preseason. Just wanted to get your thoughts on your initial impressions of what you saw so far.
Well, I think it's an exciting part of the game. And obviously, we saw the impact it made last year at the AHL level, where vast majority of games, 75%, I think, were completed in overtime. It was, rather than going to the shootout will be there if it's needed. But I think the players are excited about it. Claude spent a lot of time in practice, preparing the players to be put in those situations. And I would assume the rest of the coaches around the league have tried to do a similar fashion. But the players themselves have been excited about the change and adapting. To sort of seeing, you realize you have a chance at one end. If you miss and the goalie doesn't have some Velcro on him, a chance starts an outnumbered chance going the other way. So I think it's exciting for the game. It's part of the game. It exists as a traditional part of the game in terms of when you go to 3-on-3. The nuances we were talking about last night in the plane of, when the guy comes out of the box, you're in 4-on-4. It changes for all of us. But I think it's exciting for the league going forward.
Yeah, I would agree. I've never really been a huge fan of the shootout, so anything we can do to get rid of shootouts is fine by me. To Donnie's point, I like the fact that Claude had tried a few different things, whether it's 3 forwards or 2 forwards and a D. I think it's important for us to try those things. But, the line changes are going to be important, and making sure you hit the net, because we've seen play go the other way and the game ends pretty quick.
Andy Marriage from the New England Hockey Journal for Don and Claude. The injury to Seidenberg and even Zdeno's brief injury spate there kind of bring to light the fact that the guys pulling your biggest minutes are getting on the older side of the coin. Are there players now that you can identify that either are already ready to take bigger minutes, or that maybe you can push this year to become sort of that 20 to 25 minute guy?
First of all, I don't know if it's because those two guys are injured. I don't think it has anything to do with their age. It's just injuries that happen, and unfortunately, it happened to 2 of our veteran players back there. But I don't agree with age. These guys are probably 2 of the guys that are in best shape in our hockey club. So I think it's a coincidence, first of all. But second of all, I think there's a lot of guys that have been around now for a long time, and they can definitely take some more minutes, and there's no doubt about that. And we all know that transition comes along the way, and some players grow in their roles and become better players, so they're entitled to have more ice time. Well, it has to come off somebody, and most of the time it comes off people that have a lot of ice time. So I don't see that as an issue. I see that as an asset. I still know that those guys can still play big minutes, but if other guys can take some minutes away, it means that you have a better balance and guys that are a little fresher down the road.
Well, I mean, I'll follow up on the fact that I think that we've used this training camp experience without those two players to our advantage to spread the wealth around, and the rest of our defensemen spread those minutes around, and we've had several players that have acquitted themselves well. We've played all of our younger players up and down. We haven't just relied on the returnees. So that's part of the transition that Claude spoke about, and moving forward with some of these guys that we believe will step up as they gain more experience throughout the league, night in, night out. I mean, it's a growing process, and we're committed to allowing these guys to find their way, so to speak, and within the framework. We haven't changed the identity, as to how we're going to defend, and I think we've done a good job throughout training camp, up and down our lineup, and that's a testament to the coaches and the way they're going to approach the game, and our players is to buy in.
Mike Loftus, Patriot Ledgers for Cam. Cam, a year ago, right as the roster was set, you expressed a little bit of disappointment that competition-wise, younger players, newer players hadn't really done as much as you hoped to push the veterans and make some kind of a change here. A year later, after watching this camp, can you tell us, do you see progress? Are you happy with what you've seen in that competition?
Yeah, I have seen progress, and I think it speaks to our roster this year and players looking at pushing for jobs, and especially on the back end, and even in the forward group, we had some kids come in and probably we had them stay longer because of the way they were pushing for jobs, and I think it's important for us to continue to have those players throughout the organization that are going to push for jobs, and it makes the players that feel safe maybe a little less safe, which is always a good thing. And I think competition's key. It really is. I mean, you never like seeing anybody get complacent, and if you have competition coming from below, it's hard to get complacent.
For Charlie Jacobs, we've heard from obviously Don and Claude Julien a lot about the new players and the new faces who are coming in, but from your perspective, from the time this summer when those new players were brought in, your observations on that and during training camp and what you've seen from them and them fitting into this team?
Karen, I really like the new additions. The guys from the West Coast, Matt and Colin, really came in here. In particular, when Matt Bolesky came in, I was very impressed with his attitude, and frankly, he jumped right into this position and acclimated well. Same with Hayes. I mean, we've got some really, I think, good sort of gritty, what I would call Bruins, frankly, that I think will really resonate here with our fan base. So I like it. I really do like the changes that Don has implemented over the summer. I think it hasn't been necessarily a reboot, but maybe just a refresh. And when you look at it from that perspective, the amount of youth, a little bit of turnover that we had, I'm optimistic about this upcoming season, and I'm very happy with what's transpired.
This is for Cam. When you look at the team that's been built here, what would you say your realistic view of what this team can accomplish this year is, and what's your optimistic view of what this team could accomplish?
Well, I mean, I don't have a crystal ball, but I feel our forward group is pretty deep. I think we're going to get some more offense throughout all four lines. I think we're going to be more consistent in that regard. I think our goaltending situation should be better than last year. I think we can reduce the amount of games that Tuukka had to play last year. And then from the back end, I'm excited to see some of these guys develop. I really am. I think we know what they can do offensively. We've seen what they can do. They all, not all of them are the same, but the kids that we brought in, they skate extremely well. And like I said, with Claude and his staff, I think they can work with him on tightening things up a little bit on the defensive side. So I see us really improving throughout the course of the year. I really do, with the group that we have that's new and the group that's returning. I think I'm excited to see us get going in the regular season. But I really believe that we're going to improve as the season goes along.
Just to follow up, do you see this team as currently constituted having a chance to make a deep run in the playoffs? Is that a possibility for this team?
Well, I think you have to, I don't want to put any expectations. I mean, our goal is to compete for Stanley Cups. And, we'll see how the season plays out. We have some cap space, which we haven't had in a while, so we have opportunities down the road if there's a situation that arises where, Don feels like he can do something that's going to help us improve. I really feel like we've got guys that want to compete for Stanley Cups on our roster. We brought in guys that do want to compete. They want to win, and we'll see where things go throughout the season. But I like the fact that we have opportunities to improve if need be, and that's it's a lot easier to do that when you can add without having to subtract.
Claude Fluto Shinzawa, Boston Globe. Maybe it's the same this year versus any other year, but how do you go about your business knowing that coaches in your position, the job security, it's tenuous?
Well, to be honest with you, it really isn't a burden for me. It's not a concern for me. As I've always said, we know as coaches what our job security is, and it's not very big. And we're based on our performances and assessed by people that assess not always just wins and losses, but the situation and the expectations. So, I'm good where I am right now. I'm not even thinking about that. The only time I have to is when you guys ask me. Other than that, I just go ahead and I do my job, and I enjoy doing my job. And like I said all along, Fluto, I'm happy to be here. This is a place that I've felt really comfortable with the people around me, the organization, the city, and the fan base, and also, I love working for this organization. So I just keep coming in every day, trying to do my best here, and then trying to last as long as I can. And that's basically my concern. And 1 year at a time. And my job this year is pretty exciting because, like we said, there's been a lot of changes, and in different players, younger group, and those are the kind of challenges I love. So I'm looking forward to this year.
I just want to jump in on that because I've read some things where people have mentioned that Claude could be on the hot seat. I think it's unfair to say that. Claude's a very good coach in this league. Donnie has came to us with a plan of how he'd like to see the team play. He's had many conversations with Claude about that. But a lot of things happen throughout the course of the year that's not necessarily just on the coach. So, I think it's unfair. I know why certain things are said at times, but it's really unfair to start the season where, it's out there where the coach could be on the hot seat. I think it's unfair to Claude.
Andy, and then Matt.
Again, Andy Merritt from the New England Hockey Journal. For Don and Cam, maybe if you want to chime in. Jay Pandolfo obviously is taking on a bigger role this year. Can you kind of talk about what your relationship has been like with him and why you feel like he's in a place to take on the larger responsibilities that he is this year?
Well, I've known Jay a long time, and I've played against him, respect him as a player and a person. It's funny that my transition out of playing is very similar to Jay's, where he spent a year with us, where he was in and out of the lineup. Obviously, was well respected by the coaches, handled himself in a professional manner. Started to almost work in the development role as a result of that, spending a lot of time not necessarily playing but around players, and certainly continue to make an impact. And as an older player at that particular time, I think you go through, where you are in your own life. And Jay came right out of hockey and was anxious to get back in because he knew he could make an impact along those lines. He made a seamless transition going down to Providence on a daily basis to go in to see and learn about our players. He spent a lot of time with the coaches down there. He went on the bench in the playoffs. He's got a great rapport with players, be able to break down from a video standpoint, talking, communicating. Most importantly, as a development role, you have to be able to communicate. He'll call the coaches and talk at any different level, the junior level, the college level. He's headed over to Sweden. He's been fully vested. and it's what I like about him as a person. I enjoy, talking hockey with him a lot, but also sharing the personal relationships of how I've seen players develop, and he's asked questions. He advocated on Jamie Langbruner's behalf. He's got a great relationship with him. He thinks he's going to bring another twist. Jamie took a different path than some of us, took the NHL and had a long, successful career as well. So, Jay wants his hands, to be involved and wants to be able to make an impact. And I think it's a great fit for the organization.
This one's for Charlie Jacobs. You heard what Cam had to say about the expectations for this season. He talked about improving over the course of the season. He talked about the flexibility you guys now have. So what is your kind of expectation and what would translate to success for you as far as this season is concerned?
Well, I think that Cam put it best, is we want a team that can compete for Stanley Cup, and that's our goal. Whether we to handicap where we may be come springtime, very difficult to do sitting here today.
This question for Don. Don, earlier in the preseason, Brad Marchand said that he felt there was a bit of a divided dressing room towards the end of last year. I would imagine if that was the case, you guys already were aware of it. How much of that factored into your off-season moves and the way you approach this season?
Well, I think Brad references the fact of where we are today and watching Matt Bolesky walk through the door and integrate himself in, and I think he's excited the way Jimmy has as well. In the leadership that he's sort of embarking on in a new role. I think he references, from a personal standpoint, where he is in his own personal and professional life and the impact that he wants to make going forward. And again, we're not trying to change the personalities of our players in that regard, but it's a process for leadership. It's not something you just you inherently get on your doorstep each and every year. You have to acquire the skill and the experience to be able to impart your own knowledge onto other players. And I think Brad's at a place now where he wants to be able to do that. And maybe he recognized things that a year ago he wasn't in that position to do, and he'd like to do that going forward. I think it speaks well for him as emerging in that role. And I think that's what he was referencing. I spoke to him about it, and that's what he's indicated.
Kevin? Erica, Kevin in the back.
Kevin DuPont, Boston Globe. Cam, there's a certain segment of the fan base that forever with this team will focus on physical play and fighting. And fighting, of course, has been mitigated to a great degree by the league. I'm curious of your review of this team for the last couple of years in terms of physical play and fighting, if you will, and where you are going into this year. Do you think it's going to be different? Can it be different?
Well, yeah, I mean, the fighting certainly has changed throughout the league. I mean, fights are down, and that's, the way the game's trending. I've always been one that, if it's organic, then, it's been part of the game. But I've never been one that really enjoyed a staged fight. I never saw the purpose for that. I didn't think it was necessary. As far as physical play, I mean, we want our guys to compete. We don't need someone to put someone in the fifth row, but we want our players to compete for pucks, be strong on pucks, take the body when it's there. That's really, from my perspective, what I expect out of our team. We want guys to play hard. Donnie's talked about hard skill. That's what we're looking for, is hard skill, and it comes in many different fashions. I mean, Patrice Bergeron's a prime example. This guy competes. You guys seen him year after year after year, game after game. He competes, and we want those types of players that are going to compete. Now, we don't want guys passing up an opportunity to take the body, because that creates some other offense, especially in the offensive zone. If you're going down on a D, for example, and he's thinking about getting hit, he's going to move the puck a little bit quicker. So, we want to establish that type of play, and I think we're adding some speed to our game, but I don't want us to ever get away from being a physical team. But that's really, just competing and being hard on pucks and taking the body when it's available.
Kim, just to follow up on that, there seems to be sometimes a mentality with young kids coming up the ranks, whether they be sort of a third or fourth line or just trying to make the team, that maybe they have to fight to make their presence felt or to make the team. Is there a way, and you can disagree with me on that mentality, but if it is there and you think it is there a way to change that?
I don't know if it's necessarily there. Internally we talk about competing hard and battling for pucks and that's what we talk about internally. Externally, it's this big bad Bruins, that's kind of followed since the 70s and 80s and maybe early 90s. For us, we just want to be hard to play against, and that's what we tell the players at development camp, all the way through training camp. The guys in Providence, that's what they know. They know internally how we want to play. So, it's a little different mentality externally that's talked about the Bruins, but, for us, it's really just let's play hard. Let's be a hard team to play against. Let's be physical when it's there, and more importantly, play smart.
Do you think that's the mentality league-wide, though, aside from the Bruins?
That
They don't need to fight necessarily to make the team?
Well, it's getting away from that. I mean, like I said, organically, if things happen and tempers flare and guys drop the gloves, and that's still allowed in this game. And there's guys that do have that flip that'll switch and they'll drop their gloves, but gone are the days where that's how you're going to get in the league is by fighting. Those days are gone. You have to be able to play. I mean, the coaches across the league, they want to know that they can put a guy out there that's going to chew up some minutes and create some offense, maybe wear the team down a little bit. That's what you're seeing for the fourth line especially. But gone are the days oh, I'm a fighter, I'm going to get into the National Hockey League.
For Mr. Jacobs, just with the Board of Governors meeting this week, I was wondering if you could just let us know anything that came out of that. With the Board of Governors meeting this week?
Yes.
Just if anything came out of that.
Well, a lot
you
came
can
out.
let us know.
No, there were a lot of things, but I think what you're saying of interest, and I think the only thing that might be is the expansion process seems to be moving forward, and they had two candidates, one being Quebec and the other Las Vegas, and they both made presentations, and there's a lot of content there. There's a lot of capability there. I don't know if there's a desire or will within the board of the existing franchises for expansion yet or not. But they both made pretty interesting proposals. Both have very legitimate arenas in place and organizations in place. So there's a capacity out there. I don't know if there's a will from the league standpoint and the members of the league. I don't think I can improve on that.
We'll take two more questions, if there are two more at this point. Joe, up front.
Mr. Jacobs, just to continue on that, what would your decision be? If you had a choice, would you rather see a team up in Quebec? Would you rather see a team down in Vegas?
I don't know if. I think it's more important. What is the best thing for the league as a whole, and what's the best thing for Boston? Right now, the 30 teams are pretty good for all of us. I think taking where we stand today, I feel good about where we are today. But as you framed the question there, we're imbalanced. We're in balance here, and we've got 16 teams in the East and 14 in the West. I would probably have to indicate that another team in the West would make more sense for us. Now, looking at the two locations, you'd have to say that Quebec looks like they are more history there for hockey. But the presentation that was made was very compelling by those people in Las Vegas. So there's no clear-cut answer there, but I'm sort of giving you some of the conditions in consideration.
Is there one more? No? All right, thanks, everybody. We'll do scrums for Mr. Jacobs and Charlie Jacobs first, and then a few minutes after that, we'll have scrums for Cam and for Donnie. Claude, you're released.